Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm going to turn this over to Dr. Gallagher.
Thank you, Ms. Dudley. Tonight we start to have the report of our audit committee. Mr. DeVito,
Thank you, Dr. Gallagher. So as part of the audit committee, which is the full board and our auditors, we have a presentation from our external auditor. And on behalf of the firm of Cullen and Danowski, we have Jill Sanders who's going to talk about her work. That will begin in terms of the planning meeting, which we call it the planning meeting, in terms of what the work will be for the 2025-26 financial statements that we're currently preparing, and that will be audited. So once Joe is on, so you can begin.
Before we have to come on, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I did last year to try to not to be read to, and try to hit the major points and come back. Because she's so thorough, so damn professional that we be here till midnight listening to this.
Well, I'll ask her if she is, once she's on, she has a presentation to just hit the high points. So, okay. Jill, can you hear us? Hi, Jill, can you hear me?
Good evening.
Jill, welcome. I just introduced you to the board and to the people that we have in attendance at the meeting, and there was a request from the board if you can hit the high notes of the presentation, that would be greatly appreciated. The board has full confidence in your efforts and in the work that you're going to be doing to review and audit the 25-26 financial statements. So if you can just hit some of the highlights, that would be great. And please begin. Thank you for joining us.
Okay, great. Thank you for the opportunity. I will try to get into the portions of the presentation that are the most pertinent. I think the audit engagement itself on page 1, just so that as a refresher as to what we're engaged to do versus what your internal claims auditor and your internal auditor does with respect to engagements for the district. So we're going to give an opinion on the financial statements. Are they presented fairly in material respects with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America? And I'm going to talk a little bit about the change in the financial statement structure when we get to the latter part of this presentation. So the objective here is to render what's known as an unmodified opinion, a clean opinion, which means the financial statements fairly present. There's also in the large document that we provide to the Board of Education, the second bullet, for reporting in compliance on page 1 with laws and grant agreements and contracts. And this is because the district does receive federal funding. And then we're also separately reporting on a cash basis because the state wants us to do this on the activities of the extra classroom activity funds. We rendered a federal single audit report during the first quarter of 2026. So just to come full circle on that, our opinion was a clean opinion. We had one recommendation as a finding with respect to personnel activity reports. And this has to do with reporting in a format that the federal government is looking for. So there is a record of individuals who are charged to various federal programs and the time that they spend. But there's a certain format that the federal government is looking for. So we're recommending that the school district adopt the format that the government is looking for. We did audit the special education cluster. Okay, so just to talk about the meat of what we really do, I think it's really appropriate to go back to pages 6 and 7 of the presentation materials. And so it starts with an assessment of risk. And as the Board of Education knows from my presentations in years past, the district has a good internal control structure in place, checks and balances over the financial control, over the financial cycles. We need to understand each year what those cycles look like. We're talking about cash receipts, cash disbursements, purchasing, payroll. Those are the major ones. And then there are other cycles that we can look at. We ask the staff to tell us what they do. We document those procedures. We make sure that there's controls in place with respect to the procedures that are performed and that they're operating effectively, the internal controls. And as you can see at the bottom part of page 6, these are some of the things that we do to get some assurance on the internal control structure. So as I mentioned, we interview the district personnel. We will go ahead and obtain internal audit reports, the overall risk assessment, and any various area assessments that are performed, and see whether or not they relate to the financial statement audit. We have already
I would like to keep going, so please keep it moving on this. Keep reading through the presentation.
You're on page 7.
Right.
Yes, we're on page 7. Do you want to keep going, Michael? That's not a good idea. Can we go with that?
You're all right.
Yes. That's it, yeah.
So as Jill was saying, the audit team will review the minutes from the board meetings. They'll look at the different internal auditor report, claims auditors reports, and they do a preliminary analytic review of our account balances just to see how we're ending the year. Then they start doing their testing, what they call the substantive testing. And I believe she's going to begin that with the team at the beginning of September. By that time, all of the major parts of the financial statements will be concluded. I don't know if I want to go on to the next page. History.
No, no, that's certainly.
Hi.
Hi, Adam, we're not quite ready to.
Too early,
stand,
should I,
That's right, just stand by. We want Jill to finish.
Okay.
Wait till she left. She can walk back in. Michael, you want to?
I was going to call it.
Oh,
Yeah, we lost you. You wanted to, just on top of page 7, the substantive testing. Yeah, okay, hang on. Go ahead, Jill.
Can you hear me now?
oh.
Do you want me to try to zoom in through the phone instead of the computer?
Yes. Sure, that's fine. Or you
Okay,
can
I'm
keep
sorry.
talking, we can follow along. Yeah, and we can follow along, Jill, if you want, just do it by the phone.
Okay, that's fine, thank you. I apologize for that, I'm not sure what happened. Okay, so at the top of page 7, then, we're going to substantiate the account balances and the transactions, because we've already identified the internal control structure, that it's a sound internal control structure, that it's working effectively. And so then we'll drill down on the actual amounts that are in the transactions and the account balances, focusing on payroll and related liabilities, since this is the largest part of the operating budget, making sure that revenue is recognized to the extent that it should be, as they're an underlying expense, as they're matching, making sure that the reserve activities in accordance with the board's authorization and compliance with municipal and education law. Capital project expenditures, this is the capital reserve, this is the old capital transfers from the general fund operating budget, And then there are, as we know, the energy performance contract is still in the process of being paid off. And then to the extent that there's any activity with respect to the authorization from the public, most recently, we'll look at those capital project expenditures. District reports their expenditures in the capital area to Asset Maps, which is a third-party company, and they maintain an inventory and calculate depreciation. And so we'll wait to get that report and tie that back into the financial statement. There are also a number of long-term liabilities, and these are on the accrual basis with government-wide financial statement. So this is the EPC financing, as I mentioned. There's leases, there's compensated absences, so this is the value of time that's earned that will be paid out when people separate. There's pension liabilities for which we wait to get third-party reporting, both from the teachers' retirement system and the local employees' retirement system. And then there's the actuarial evaluations from Sound, which talk about the actual liability for workers' compensation and other post-employment benefits, medical insurance and such. And on the next page, then, I will come in and present the reports in public while they are in draft. Same process as the previous year. That's basically what page 8 talks about, and that the federal single audit is submitted during the first quarter of the next year. The deadline is March 31st of the following year. We've already come to the district and done the work on page 9 for the first phase during the week of May 18th, and we are scheduled to return to the district the week of September 14th to do the more substantive testing. And this is the timetable then for the presentation of the draft audit reports and the federal single audit report. So there's 3 pronouncements that are appropriate for this year. This is the second year of GASB 101, compensated absences. Last year was the change in the way that they were valued. It used to be prior to last year that it was just whatever was in the bank according to contract or agreements with individuals, that was what was captured as far as the liability. On the accrual basis financial statements, we know that whatever gets paid out on an ongoing basis gets charged to the budget in the year in which someone separates. Last year, with GASB 101, the standard said, look at time that's earned also that's not necessarily paid out, and layer that on top of the time that's paid out in order to get that higher level calculation of what the value of time is that's accruing in everyone's bank as they're moving along. So that was the first year. This is the second year, and so the standards want school districts and local governments to look back. This is a historical calculation. Now, if you have another year that has passed, look back and add that information based on the most recent year to the previous 2 years in order to determine what that liability for financial reporting will be. So that's GASB 101. GASB 103 on page 11 is going to be a big change to the financial statement presentation for a couple of reasons. First of all, management's discussion and analysis, even though it was supposed to be the friendly part of the financial statement, the standards have determined that it's too much information and not necessarily all the information that a reader would find useful. So when we review this, and when I come with the documents in draft, we'll see that this is a much more abbreviated version of the financial highlights of the school district, and it will focus more on general fund. This is known as the operating budget results. Okay, and there will also be another schedule within the financial statement that will describe the differences between the original budget and the final budget. Now, for Long Beach School District, your final budget is pretty close to your original budget. You really don't have many transfers during the year, and there really is not too much of a change between the original budget amount and the final budget amount, except to the extent that the community may approve a transfer from the capital reserve fund to the capital project fund. Okay, the general fund capital reserve to the capital project fund capital reserve for specific authorized projects. So that's typically the only revision that we see between the original and final budget. In conjunction with this, the profession also said, look under GASB 100, so this is the Government Accounting Standards Board, at the format of the financial statements. And so to the extent that there are many funds presented in the local government's financial statement, some of them are less important to the reader than others. Obviously, the general fund is, as I mentioned before, whereas the operating results is important. the special aid fund. This runs in tandem with the general fund, and to the extent that you may not get funding, those expenditures, if you wanted to continue programs, would fall over back into the general fund. And for Long Beach School District, the other fund that's a significant fund or a major fund would be the capital project fund, because you have quite a bit of activity there. So those three funds will be presented individually. The other funds that are on the balance sheet in the statement of revenues and expenditures will be presented in a non-major fashion. And what this means that when you look at the balance sheet and statement of revenues and expenditures, you will see that the food service fund, the debt service fund, the scholarship fund, and the extra classroom activity fund will be grouped together, and they will be determined to be a non-major fund. Okay, and there's certain metrics that you apply in order to make this determination. It's on a district by district basis, and it also has to do with the risk assessment for the district. But the level of detail that we see on the 25 financial statement will still be available for the reader. It will just be in a different place. It will be behind the financial statement disclosures. So you will still see the same balance sheet for each individual fund, and you will still see the same revenues, expenditures, and change from fund balance for each individual fund. They will just be combined for the purposes of the balance sheet and the revenues and statement of revenues and expenditures, okay? And this will help the district with respect to the opinion that's rendered. We will not be rendering on each individual opinion unit as we have in the past. We'll be rendering on the opinion over the whole financial statement for the school district, and the materiality levels change within the non-major fund. So because the controls are good within the extra classroom activity fund, and we have the qualification because we as auditors cannot audit the cash receipts at inception, the expectation based on the materiality is that there will be an unqualified opinion across all of the financial statement. So that's a big change. And then the other changes on GAS, the next page, page 12, which is GASB 104, and it has to do with 50% leased assets or subscription-based assets. And the district had early implemented this during fiscal year 2025.
Jill, if I could just add in, just to give a little context to the board. So basically, when we talk about GASB 103, which is this new way of looking at the financial statements and talking about the variances between our budget and our actual, basically GASB 103 has caught up with what Long Beach has been doing for many, many years. So the board knows that in the fall, Dr. Ryan usually asks for a meeting with me, and we review the variances between budget and actual, and then when I present that and we discuss it to the board gets a copy of this variance report. Basically, it's that process that now the general accounting standards had said they want to see that in the financial statements and the audit of the school district. So we've already been doing that, and in discussions with Bill Sanders, she said that because our budget is so tight and our variances are so small, that the level of materiality is really only maybe 1 or 2 codes on an annual basis, and it's things that we know about, mostly special ed, in terms of special ed tuition. If we can't find placements for some of our students, we budget for it, hoping that they're going to find placement in the program. If they don't, then we're going to see some, variance there because we end up homeschooling them and instead of sending them to the program. And that's basically what this discussion of this GASB 103 is all about. Is now we're going to have to do that on a formal basis, but we've been doing that for years already, just as a best practice. Thank you, Joe. I just wanted to give them some context on that.
No, that's very good. And as Michael mentioned, this is based upon materiality at the financial statement level. So when you have the opportunity, if you wanted to look at page 61 and 62 in the previous year's financial statement, you'll see from a material standpoint, there are very few line items, as Michael mentioned. The other one that comes to be is the employee benefits area because of the increase in health insurance costs that will be discussed in narrative form underneath the new format in the schedule of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance, budget versus actual.
Thank you, Jill. Any questions from the board? Dr. Ryan?
I just wanted to thank you. You mentioned in your presentation that we haven't had too many budget transfers in the course of the school year. what would you consider to be too many budget transfers in the course of the school year? And is that number like a red light in terms of mismanagement or difficulty in terms of budgeting? Or is it just an aberration possibly in the course of the year?
Okay, that's a very good question. So it's not only the magnitude of the transfer, it's the purpose of the transfer, if that makes sense to you. So when Michael described that there may be anticipation of having a certain number of students requiring special education services at a particular level, and then you come to find out that the enrollment does not dictate you having those dollars available for that particular purpose, and you do a transfer to better utilize that funding for the student population overall, that is a good transfer as compared to I continually through the years, continually through the months, present transfers for the Board of Education to get to a certain point, that it takes me that many months to get there, and that they don't necessarily make much sense in terms of when the original budget was created.
Thank you. I just have one other question. Newsday recently had a listing of school districts that have basically overrun their reserve funds in terms of what they're allowed to keep. Do you think this, given the number that appeared to me in Newsday, seemed to be excessive, do you think the state's going to relax their present requirement in terms of what districts are going to be allowed to keep in reserve, or do you think it's just going to go as is? There has not been, it's at 4% of the next year's budget, as we know. It has not been 5% for many, many, many years. I think with respect to, the state aid funding, if that continues at the level that it's at, I'm not so sure that they're going to raise the percentage cap for the reserves. There's always conversation about this. I think is on the flip side, and that's a good question too. On the flip side, there's a number of districts that are very, very tight and have had to use their reserves or liquidate reserves for a purpose for which they were not intended. And that's not necessarily, there's been articles about a district in months past. There's a couple of other districts. So I'm not sure that the district's going to look to do anything with the reserves right now, but anything is possible. Yeah, I just wanted to say, I've been listening to you for a long time, and every time I listen to you, I feel like I should apply for 3 credits. Because you're just so thorough and so professional in terms of that. I just wanted to thank you, and I'm sure you didn't miss coming out here because we have rain, and we brought you out under every kind of storm, so I'm glad you're in a safe harbor. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And to your point though too, you have consistency as far as the levels that your reserves have been at. And they're within general municipal law and educational law parameters. And they make sense in terms of what your ultimate liabilities are. So I think the state likes that also when they see consistency and a plan in place.
Okay, thank you again. Thank you very much.
I just have a very quick
One more
question. Just one more question. Can you just refresh my memory on page 7? What is the OPEB actuarial valuation?
That's a great question. Okay, so you provide for in your budget health insurance costs for current employees and for retirees, depending upon what their employment agreement is or their bargaining agreement might be.
Right.
Other post-employment benefits is a calculation by an actuary, and the calculation works so that let's look at the current individuals who are receiving health insurance benefits. Let's look at trending out the healthcare cost trend rate. Let's look at trending out what the increase in costs are going to be based upon a discount rate. And then let's come up with an ultimate liability. So if the district had money to set aside today to take care of these payments from here to eternity, what would the district need to have? And so when you get to the financial statement and you look at the financial statement, the numbers are a wild number, it's $214 million, okay? And that's because that's with the expectation that you would be paying everyone who's entitled to health insurance benefits from here through mortality with a projected increase in the healthcare cost trend rates and a growth as far as the value of what those payouts would be. So that's what the OPEB is.
But isn't it fair to say, Jill, that although it's a required entry on the financial statement, it's really just academic? I mean, we really are are not expected to have that as a liability for next year. It's just more for reporting purposes, right, Judge?
It's a financial reporting liability, has no impact on the budget because you're adequately setting aside the funds that you need to pay the responsibility on an ongoing basis. And, unfortunately, or fortunately, to the extent that people are living longer and health insurance costs are continuing to grow, that number is only going to get bigger, and the state has not provided for a mechanism for funding. There is no reserve, okay? So to the extent that you've been able through the budget to manage the cost, that's a good thing. And I think that's just, this is just a reference point.
Okay, thank you, and thank you so much for your presentation.
Oh, you're very welcome. Any questions that I didn't cover, I apologize that I went very fast. Please direct them back to Michael, and I'm more than happy to answer them.
Thank you, Jim. Okay,
Thank you for your time this evening.
thank you. Chris, can you help us move on to the presentation from the internal audit?
Hello?
Adam, you and Erin may begin. We're ready for you. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. You're on.
All right, of course. Good evening, everyone. Adam, we have a slide presentation, so I'm just going to pull that up on the screen.
Let's see if I could, okay, you gotta send the request. Okay. Let's share. Okay. Can you guys see it?
Yes.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
All right.
All right, great. All right, good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're here to present the results of our review of facilities usage, along with a brief update on the district's annual risk assessment and our proposed audit plan for next year. So as part of our internal audit responsibilities, we're focused on evaluating the internal controls and identifying opportunities to strengthen processes and reduce risk. So overall, we did find that the district has established procedures for administering facility use requests, and the process is working as intended. You'll see that our recommendations are primarily focused on improving consistency, documentation, and oversight. So Adam, if you could just, yeah, there we go. To provide some background, the district allows the community organizations and outside groups to use the school facilities under Board Policy 3280. And while this may be a valuable service to the community, it definitely carries certain risks because it does involve insurance requirements, you have liability exposure, approvals, billing, and collection activities. During the period that we reviewed, the district processed a pretty significant volume of activity. There were more than 900 facility use events scheduled between July of 25 and March of 26. And that involves a great deal of coordination between buildings and grounds, your school administrators, and your business office. So the objective of our review was pretty straightforward. We wanted to determine whether the internal controls surrounding facility usage are operating effectively, and whether applications, approvals, your insurance documentation, billing, and your fee collections are all being administered appropriately. So to perform this review, we started with our interviews. We reviewed the district's policies and procedures, and then we analyzed information that we downloaded from ML Schedules, which is the district's facility usage platform, and then we examined supporting documentation for a sample of facility use events. Go to the next slide. For our testing, as I said, we selected 25 facility use requests. We made sure that they represented a variety of different types of organizations, facilities, and billing scenarios. we wanted to get a good idea of what the approval process looked like, insurance documentation, how they created their billing calculations, what collections look like, and then we reviewed all the different supporting documentations, such as custodial and even security support. Overall, you'll see that our conclusion was pretty positive. We found that the district does have implemented and organized procedures, and many of the key controls needed to manage facility use activities. That said, and we often see this at all school districts, when they're implementing newer systems, ML Schedules is a newer system for the district. There are always opportunities to improve consistency. So the observations that we had identified were not indicative of a broken practices, rather they really related more so to strengthening the execution, documentation, retention, monitoring activities, and then just making sure that the policy aligns with how the process actually operates today. So I'll briefly summarize the 4 findings that we had identified during our review. I'd say the most significant observation involved insurance verification and required facility use documentation. So while we found that organizations did usually provide insurance certificates, we didn't always have evidence that that coverage remained valid for the actual dates of facility use. And certain required documentation wasn't necessarily retained. So we weren't able to, verify. That doesn't mean that they weren't insured, but we didn't have it available to us at the time of our testing. So our recommendation is to strengthen the pre-approval review procedures and also make greater use of ML Schedules functionality. As the district gets used to the new program, they'll be able to use that functionality to help automate and then monitor these requirements, and it will make life a lot easier. Our second finding related to billing practices. So current operations include both upfront fees and charges that they're charging for can really only be determined after an event occurs, such as custodial or security costs, for example, if they were to stay longer than expected or make a bigger mess. So we found that the policy framework didn't necessarily keep pace with those operational realities, and our recommendation was that they update the policies and documentation so that billing practices, fee waivers, payment expectations are all very clearly defined and then consistently applied. Our third finding, and we see this really everywhere we do this review, involves delinquent facility use accounts. So while districts may be monitoring the balances, they don't tend to always have a formally documented process on how overdue accounts should be handled. So if they were to establish a clear collection procedure and criteria restricting future use when balances remain unpaid, that would just help improve consistency and accountability. And the final finding has to do with scheduling and maintaining accurate scheduling records. We had noted that there were some instances where events were canceled, or they may have never occurred, but the records themselves hadn't been updated accordingly. So we did not note any resulting billing issues, but accurate scheduling data supports reporting, utilization analysis, and it also helps with administrative oversight. I do want to point out, more importantly, that management has been very receptive to these recommendations. We've already been on site, we've met with the new facilities director, and we've already been discussing the different process improvements, including meeting with ML Schedules representatives to learn the program better, the facilities director to just evaluate additional system capabilities and also strengthen oversight. Does anyone have any questions regarding the facilities review?
Yes, I do. First of all, thank you for your presentation, but when you say for scheduling records that they weren't consistently updated, approximately how many records weren't updated?
Sure, so out of our sample of 25, what did we have? Was it like 2 or 3?
Let's see, I could pull it up. For issue, let's see, which one are we talking about? Oh, for issue 4, that canceled. Let's see.
it wasn't a large, I want to say it was about 2 or 3.
Only two.
That I remember, and it really more so it was that the old facilities director, he, as you know, he's retired. He knew, like he personally knew that, oh yeah, they never came, they never ended up showing up, but it was never removed from the calendar, which doesn't allow, the day or time or place to be available for other people, or if you're trying to look back and have oversight in the process, it's very hard to have that if you don't have all your data correctly listed.
And I think, Danny, just to give context,
Yeah.
I think what they're recommending is that the facilities office just keep up, just make sure that they make those updates in the system. So, it's constant upkeep because there's so much use of our facilities. So if someone says, oh, we're not really gonna use it Saturday afternoon, they didn't necessarily on Monday say, oh, such and such a group did not use the facility Saturday afternoon, take it out of the reservation. Maybe because they knew at that point no one else was going to be able to use it. So it's examples like that, but for the integrity of the process, we want to make sure that we keep updating that system, even if it is something that happens where you have to update it after the fact. So in their testing, like they tested 25 events, they came up with some findings that they're using to make recommendations to upgrade our procedures, which we welcome. We're already starting to upgrade that, but that's the example of, when somebody canceled and
Right.
what the system wasn't updated.
Do we have like a timeline, Mr. DeVito, when you have to cancel? Like, do we give them 48 hours, 24 hours?
No, I don't believe we have that kind of time.
I'm only thinking about it because you're working on the policy, so maybe these are protocols that we can put into the policy.
Yeah, absolutely, we are gonna have to review,
Yeah.
based on this report, review our policy again to see how we need to update it so that the policy is in sync with our practice. Because in some ways, what we're doing is actually the best practice, but the policy needs to be updated.
Okay, thank you, that was my question.
Okay, of course.
Aaron, we have another question, Dr. Ryan.
You mentioned in your report, you might answer this, or maybe Mr. DeVito, you mentioned in your report also, you're concerned about waivers, who got waivers, who didn't. The implication wasn't quite clear, and it wasn't quite clear to you, it certainly wasn't quite clear to me. So how are waivers determined in terms of this, Mr. DeVito, or Mr. Accountant, how is it determined?
Yeah, are you talking about a waiver of the fee?
Yeah.
Yeah, so, again, going back to the new fee structure that we have, is that every organization has to submit the $100 application fee, but not PTA, right? And I guess that isn't clearly spelled out in our policy that PTA is given a blanket waiver that they're not required. Am I correct, Aaron? It's not something that we discussed.
Yeah, I mean, basically the thought process behind that is that there may be instances where the district finds it appropriate to waive a fee. So it's more so documenting that, if it's a one-off, making sure that you're showing the approval and that you document the reason. And honestly, I have seen in districts where the users of the facilities, they can be a bit aggressive. They tend to give facilities directors a hard time. They want to use it. They know that this person didn't have to pay, that kind of thing. So we're always looking for documentation because it helps support the district. If you're clearly defining when something's required, then you should also document when you decide to waive that requirement.
Like I said, clarify what's going to be lead off in terms of the policy committee this fall.
Yes.
Yes, okay, very good, thank you. Thanks, Mr. DeVito.
You're welcome. Any other questions from the board? Okay, Aaron, did you want to just do a quick recap on the risk assessment and then talk about the target area for 26, 27?
You got it. All right. So, so separate from the facilities review, we also completed our annual risk assessment update for the district. As part of this process, we look at organizational changes, board policies, information technology operations. We look at your external audit results, your claims auditor reports, and then also various external factors that could obviously affect the district's risk profile. Based on those procedures, we did not identify any significant changes that would require modifications to the district's current internal audit plan. Overall, the control environment remains stable and consistent with our prior assessment. If you want to hit up the next slide, Adam. We also take a look every year, we do monitoring. So we perform follow-up work on prior audit recommendations. This year, we have looked at employee benefits review. And overall, the district has made good progress implementing corrective actions and strengthening their controls. They had us on site in the fall to help with some training. And in several areas, processes have clearly improved and additional monitoring procedures have been established. We did have some items that remained open, primarily because management is continuing to formalize documentation and monitoring activities, and that's not unusual. Often the control itself may be functioning, but we would encourage the districts to strengthen the documentation supporting those activities. And they'd also put some new people in the benefits roles, so we'll continue to monitor those items, be supportive, will be support for the district, continue with their training next year, along with looking at recommendations from our extracurricular activities fund review that we had done last year. Slide 7 is just a quick overview of areas that we've reviewed to date. This slide provides a broader view of the district's internal audit coverage over time. And as you can see, we've performed reviews across a wide range of operational areas, including IT, payroll, benefits, purchase and accounts payable. And really the purpose of this risk-based approach is just to rotate our audit coverage while continuing to focus on areas that have the greatest operational significance and risk for the district.
So for the board, if you have a particular area that you'd like Serene to focus on, we can certainly talk about that. I know that I had mentioned to Erin and to Adam that Dr. Natale had requested that we revisit attendance, because the last time they took a look at attendance was in COVID, and it was really based on trying to make sure that we were covering everything in terms of the COVID absences. But if the board has something else that they would like them to cover, we can certainly talk about it. But at this point, I would defer to Dr. Natale's request, which is that our internal auditor take another look at attendance.
Yeah, and attendance is an area that directly impacts payroll expenditures. It involves multiple compliance requirements, leave accruals, contractual provisions, payroll calculations, time reporting. It is a very extensive review. And because payroll is one of the district's largest, expenditures, it's definitely worth taking a look, unless the audit committee would like us to look at something else.
This is fine by me.
Yeah, it's fine by me.
Okay, thank you very much, Erin and Adam. We appreciate your hard work and your collaboration with this, and we will be in touch as a follow-up. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
No problem. Take care.
Bye now.
Okay, this time, board's education, any comments?
I just want to thank you, Michael, Mr. DeVito, and to your staff for all that hard work working with the auditors. Thank you so much for always being so transparent and explaining everything so well and clear.
Anybody else?
No, I was just gonna say the same to Michael and his staff. Thank you so much. I mean, you guys are the ones that are really handling all this hard work, so we really appreciate everything.
Okay, we don't have anyone here from student organization, we'll continue that in September. Questions and comments from the public on tonight's agenda only? Anybody? Okay. Approval of the minutes,
Motion made.
Second,
any discussion?
This is submitting the executive session for May 19th.
Okay. Ms. Conway,
yes.
Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Bates? Yes, and I vote yes. Okay, presentation of the superintendent.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend item 1, certificate personnel as amended.
Motion. Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Conway?
Yes.
Dr. Ryan?
I vote yes on everything but W, I vote no on W.
Ms. Hayes?
I vote yes.
And I vote yes.
And I'd like to introduce some of our newly appointed staff members who are here tonight. Corey Mamalito, who's our new director of mathematics. Who's our new guidance counselor. And Chris Elgatti will be at Lindell.
May I say something, Ms. Kelsey?
Sure.
I turned during the very interesting financial audit discussions up there. I turned to Dr. Natal, I said, who are those two guys down there in the back row? We always notice who are strangers and who are definitely. Oh, those are good friends of the appointed, Mr. Elgatti. I just think it's very nice of you guys to come to a public meeting to give up your time to support your friend. And there's certainly more exciting things than board meetings, certainly more important things than financial reports and board meetings. So I applaud the two appointees, and I thank you guys for coming to support your friend. Very nice gesture.
I'd ask the board to consider item 2 non-certificated personnel.
Motion. Second.
Any discussion?
Yes,
Go ahead.
I just want to give a shout out to Judy Fishman. I mean, she's been around a long time, and wherever she's been, she's done a great job. She's the kind of person that you will certainly miss wherever she's been. Like I said, she's been just on it, just a very good and loyal and faithful employee. So I'm going to miss her because we had our kids in Dell years ago, and she was active in PTA, but she's been a very good, solid employee. I just wanted to give a shout out and wish her good luck. Thank you and congratulations on her retirement.
Okay, I'm sorry. Ms. Conway?
Yes.
Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Hayes?
Yes.
And I vote yes.
I'd ask the board to consider item 3 the adoption of the district-wide safety plan also as amended, and the amendments are just some updates to the chain of command names.
Motion made.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Hayes? No, sorry. Ms. Conway?
Yes.
Dr. Ryan?
You can keep us awake by doing that. Yes.
Ms. Hayes? Yes. And I vote yes.
And I guess the board to consider items 4 through 11 together.
I'll make a motion.
Second. Any discussion?
I have a question. I just have a question on the Rosetta Stone. It asks for an allocation of over 17,000, but it also says for this year and for the last school year. So was it that we didn't pay our bill last year, or we just piggybacking on last year? Why are we paying for something that?
Dr. Ryan, it's really just so we can have access to it right now. It's still 1 year's price, but we're writing curriculum using it right now, so they put in last year. I don't think that was actually necessary, but it may have been necessary from a budget perspective. But it's 1 year subscription.
Anybody else?
Yeah, my only question is, actually, it's really not just, it's not a question, it's really just a comment. I'm excited that we're going to use the Rosetta Stone during the WINGS curriculum. I think it's going to be a wonderful asset to the curriculum. So I'm excited to see how our students react to Rosetta Stone.
Yeah, and Dr. Daza will also have access to it for some of our world language classes and some of our ENF classes as well, which would be great. You know, we'll see how it goes. It's an experiment, but we're excited about the opportunity to give our students a more authentic and immersive language experience.
Ms. Conway?
Yes.
Dr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Hayes? Yes. And I vote yes. Additional new or old business from the board? Anybody? Okay. Questions and comments from the public? No. Okay. Announcements. Okay, we'll reach classroom teachers.
Karen Wilk from CTA. Just want to welcome everybody, all the new hires. Good luck and try to enjoy the rest of the summer. I will see some of you at the teacher orientation. Have a good rest of the year. Some.
Group B,
He's my ASVPG. Good evening. First, congratulations to Judy Fishman. She will definitely be missed. It was great to work with. Congratulations to Corey and all the new hires. Looking forward to the start of the school year. Thank you.
Group C,
I'll leave that. Anyway, welcome everybody, all the new faculty, especially to my new family, Will, Button, to the counseling department, and I too will miss Judy very, very much. She's a outstanding coworker of mine, and yeah, have a great rest of the summer, and I think you enjoy it.
anybody here from the PTA? No? No. Okay, motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second. All in favor?